Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Miracle of the Week, which is about the martyr, the king and the thief. And this is largely going to be concerned with events in Paris, or just outside Paris, to the north of Paris, in the late 6th century. Now, we've largely been concerned with miracles associated with glorifying God's power, particularly through positive achievements, for example, through effecting cures, through rescuing people from certain death. What I want to look at today, though, is a miracle that shows that God will punish wrongdoers, particularly if they seek to offend God's saints. The story that I'm going to be looking at concerns the tomb of an early bishop of Paris, Dionysius of Paris, who is recorded by Gregory of Tours in his histories, in Book 1, Chapter 30 of his histories, as one of the early Christian missionaries to Gaul, who, according to this account, died in the reign of the Emperor Decius. Now, Decius was known from Christian sources as a major persecutor of the Christian church, so the idea that an early bishop of Paris was martyred under Decius has a certain amount of plausibility. The site of his death and burial soon became the site of a church dedicated to him, where he is known today under the French version of his name, Dionysius, the French version being Denis. That is the form that is derived from Dionysius. Now, according to Gregory of Tours, he suffered pains in Christ's name and ended his present life by the threatening sword. In other words, he was beheaded. That's what's shown in this medieval depiction from the church of St Denis to the north of Paris, the church that rises over his tomb. Now, the tomb and church of St Dionysius of St Denis becomes really important. As I say, in the 3rd century, in the middle of the 3rd century, Dionysius is martyred. By the 5th century, there is a developing cult associated with an individual who becomes the patron saint of Paris, Saint Genevieve, or Saint Genevieve. She is particularly devoted to the cult of St Dionysius, and in the life of St Genevieve, we are told that she wanted very, very much to build a church over the tomb of Dionysius. Unfortunately, she didn't have the resources to do so, so what she did was she prayed very earnestly to God to grant her the resources that would enable her to build a church over St Dionysius' tomb. And we're told that in answer to her prayers, God provided the building materials. He provided wood for the construction of the roof. He revealed miraculously a number of lime kilns that could be used for the production of lime, which could be used in the cement for the building of the church. And the church that Genevieve built became an important one for the Frankish kingdom, and indeed for the later French kingdom. It was the site for the burial of many members of Frankish and French royalty, all the way from Clovis, following his death in 511, right the way down to the French Revolution, and indeed beyond. Some of the restored kings of France following the French Revolution were also buried in St Denis, and there is indeed a shrine to Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette in St Denis. And the image here shows some of the early sarcophagi that are found at the site of the royal crypt at St Denis. Now, the church, as I say, was outside Paris. The burial sites in ancient cities were often outside the city walls, and that meant it was in a slightly vulnerable position when the city of Paris was attacked in various civil conflicts that erupted between the rival Frankish kings. We've seen in lectures how there are a number of Frankish kings competing for influence over Francia. And in 574 there was one of these civil wars during which one of these Frankish kings, Sigebert I, his forces surrounded Paris. They pillaged the suburbs of Paris, and among the places that they pillaged was the church of St Denis, the church of St Dionysius. And it's in the context of this pillaging of the church of St Dionysius that Gregory, in his work The Glory of the Martyrs, tells us a number of stories about people who tried to loot the tomb of Dionysius and were punished by the miraculous intervention of God through his saint. So there's a story, for example, of somebody who steals silk from the tomb, and how this individual servant is punished by being thrown off a boat and drowned. Also, there's a story in which Gregory reports how an individual sort of breaking into the church in the context of this pillaging in 574. We're told that this individual was not afraid to step on the holy tomb of St Dionysius and wanted to strike a golden dove that was attached to the tomb. So he climbed up on top of the tomb to reach out with his spear to attack this golden dove, presumably to carry it off. However, at this point he lost balance. The tomb was topped by a tower, and this guy is standing on top of the tower. He loses his balance. His legs slide down either side of the tower on top of the tomb and crushes testicles violently as he slams down on top of the tomb. To make matters worse, the spear that he had been using to try and strike the golden dove suspended above the tomb stabbed him in the side, and as a result of these various injuries, this individual who was desecrating the tomb of St Dionysius was found dead. And Gregory finishes by saying, "Let no one doubt that this happened not by chance, but by the judgment of God." Again, what we have is an example of God's miraculous intervention in human affairs. And what we see here is a good example that shows that God's miraculous intervention in human affairs happens not just to cure the sick, but also to punish the wicked. And notice again that what we have is that it is God's judgment, God's power that is intervening through in association with the tomb of the saint. So let that be a warning to you. Don't be going around desecrating the tombs of the saints. Thank you, and bye.